The city of Greenwood Heights was a place of sharp contrasts. Glass towers stood beside aging brick apartments. Luxury cars glided past rusted buses, and opportunity often seemed reserved for those who already had it. For 13-year-old Marcus, hill life existed on the quieter, harder side of that contrast. Marcus lived with his mother in a small one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of a worn building whose stairways always smelled faintly of old paint and rainwater. His mother, Denise Hill, worked long shifts at a nursing home across town. She left before sunrise and often returned after the streetlights flickered on. Their life was not easy, but Denise had raised Marcus with something far more valuable than money. She had raised him with dignity. Being poor doesn't make you small. She used to tell him whenever he noticed the other kids wearing expensive sneakers or carrying brand new phones. What makes a person small is forgetting how to care about others. Marcus remembered those words every day. On a cold Thursday afternoon in late autumn, the wind pushed dry leaves across the sidewalks like restless little waves. School had just ended, and students poured out of the gates laughing and shouting. Marcus walked quietly among them, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside that backpack was a small brown paper bag. His lunch, or rather, what was left of it. Marcus had saved half his sandwich. Not because he wasn't hungry, he always was, but because dinner at home sometimes came late when his mother worked overtime. Having something small for the evening helped. As he walked toward the bus stop, the smell of roasted chestnuts drifted from a street vendor nearby. His stomach tightened with hunger, but Marcus kept walking. At the corner of Maple Avenue, the bus stop was unusually crowded. Office workers checked their watches impatiently. A young mother rocked a stroller, and an elderly couple sat quietly. On the bench, Marcus noticed them immediately. They looked tired. The old man wore a gray coat that had clearly seen many winters. His hands trembled slightly as he held onto a wooden cane. Beside him sat a woman with kind but weary eyes, wrapped in a thin scarf that barely protected her from the cold wind. Marcus didn't know why, but something about them made him slow. His steps. He overheard their voices as he passed. "I told you we shouldn't have come all the way here," the woman whispered gently. "We had to try," the old man replied softly. "But I didn't expect everything to be closed." The woman gave a small sigh. "We should have brought something to eat." The old man shook his head. "It's all right, we'll manage." Marcus felt something twist inside his chest. Hunger was a language he understood well. He stopped a few feet away, pretending to adjust the strap of his backpack while his mind wrestled with a quiet decision. Inside that bag was his only food until night, but he could still hear his mother's voice. Being poor doesn't make you small. Marcus slowly reached into his backpack and pulled out the brown paper bag. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he walked toward the bench. "Excuse me?" said softly. The couple looked up surprised. Marcus held out the bag. "You can have this." The woman blinked. "Oh no, sweetheart. That's your lunch." Marcus said quickly, "I already ate." It wasn't entirely true, but he smiled anyway. The old man studied the boy's face carefully, as if trying to understand something deeper than the moment itself. "You're sure?" he asked. Marcus nodded. Double quotes. "Yes, sir." The woman slowly accepted the bag, her hands trembling slightly. When she opened it and saw the sandwich wrapped neatly inside, her eyes filled with tears. "You're very kind," she whispered. Marcus shrugged. Shyly, "It's just a sandwich." But to them, it clearly meant more than that. The old man placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus." "Oh, Marcus," the old man said quietly. "You've done something today that most people with full pockets wouldn't think to do." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he simply smiled and stepped back. "My bus is coming," he said. "Thank you again," the woman said softly. Marcus waved and climbed onto the bus, just as its doors hissed open as he sat by the window. He watched the elderly couple split the sandwich carefully in half, as if it were something precious. Marcus leaned his head against the cold glass. His stomach growled, but oddly enough, felt warm inside. That night, dinner at home was later than usual. Denise arrived nearly an hour after Marcus had finished his. Homework. She looked exhausted, her shoulders heavy from a long shift. "Hey, baby," she said as she stepped inside. Marcus smiled. "Hey, Mom." She placed her bag on the table and rubbed her temples. "You eat already?" Marcus hesitated for just a second. "I had a little something." Denise nodded, trusting his answer without question, while she heated some leftover soup on the stove. Marcus told her about school, about a math quiz, and about a funny moment during recess. But he never mentioned the sandwich, not because he wanted to hide it, but because, to him, it didn't feel like something extraordinary. It simply felt right after dinner. Marcus went to bed early. The small room was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside the window. He fell asleep quickly, unaware that somewhere across the city, the old couple from the bus stop were having a very different conversation. They sat in a large living room illuminated by warm, golden lights. The modest coats they had worn earlier were gone. Now the old man wore a tailored sweater, and the woman sat comfortably in a leather armchair. The room around them was elegant, filled with paintings, bookshelves, and antique furniture. The old man stared thoughtfully at the empty sandwich wrapper resting on the coffee table. "I haven't seen something like that in years," he said quietly. The woman nodded. "Neither have I." "Most people walked right past us," the man continued. "But that boy stopped." The woman's voice softened. "He gave us his only food." The old man leaned back slowly. "I want to know who he is." The next morning, Marcus woke up like any other day. The alarm clock buzzed at 6:30. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and walked into the kitchen where his mother was already tying her coat. "Morning, baby," Denise said. "Morning." She handed him a small lunch bag. "Made you a peanut butter sandwich today?" Marcus grinned. "Thanks, Mom." Neither of them knew that something unusual was already unfolding downstairs. At precisely 8:15 that morning, a sleek black car pulled up in front of their building. Neighbors peeked through their windows. Curiously, cars like that didn't usually appear on their street. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out first, scanning the building calmly. Then the rear door opened, and the old man from the bus slowly stepped onto the sidewalk. But today he looked very different, confident, powerful. The man adjusted his coat and looked up at the worn apartment building. "Are you sure this is the place, Mr. Whitmore?" the assistant asked. The old man nodded. "Yes." He held a small piece of paper in his hand. On it was a name. Marcus Hill. "Let's go meet the boy who gave away his lunch," he said quietly. Upstairs, Marcus was just tying his shoes when a knock sounded at the door. Denise frowned slightly. "Expecting someone?" Marcus shook his head. "No." She walked to the door and opened it slowly, and when she did, her eyes widened in confusion. Standing outside were two well-dressed men. One of them looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place where she had seen him before. "Good morning," the old man said politely. "Does Marcus Hill live here?" Denise hesitated. "Yes." The man smiled warmly. "Wonderful." He glanced past her toward the hallway. "Because I came here today to thank him." Marcus stepped cautiously into the hallway when he heard his name. At first, he only saw the tall man in the suit, but then his eyes landed on the elderly gentleman standing just behind him. Recognition flickered across his face like a small spark. It was the same man from the bus stop. Marcus blinked in confusion. The man who had looked tired and fragile the day before now stood straight, dressed in a dark overcoat that looked far more expensive than anything Marcus had ever seen. His cane was still there, but somehow the entire atmosphere around him had changed. Denise looked from Marcus to the visitor. "You two know each other?" she asked carefully. The old man smiled gently. "We met yesterday." Marcus stepped forward slowly. You're the man from the bus stop," he said. The old man nodded.
"Yes, I am."
Denise crossed her arms slightly, still unsure about the situation. "And you are?" "My name is Charles Whitmore," the man said politely, "and I owe your son a very important thank you." Marcus tilted his head. "For what, Charles?" Whitmore looked down at him with eyes that carried both wisdom and quiet admiration. For reminding me that kindness still exists." Denise stepped aside, inviting them in, though she still seemed cautious. Their apartment was small, with only a couch, a coffee table, and a small kitchen area. Marcus suddenly felt embarrassed by the chipped paint on the walls and the worn carpet beneath his feet. But Charles Whitmore didn't seem to notice any of that. We simply looked around thoughtfully. "This is a lovely home," he said. Denise gave a polite smile. "Thank you, though it's not much." Whitmore turned toward Marcus again. "Yesterday at the bus stop," he began slowly, "my wife and I were sitting there for a reason." Marcus frowned slightly. "I thought you were just hungry." Whitmore chuckled softly. "Well, we were hungry. But that wasn't the real reason we were there." He sat carefully on the couch, placing his cane beside him. "For the last a few years, my wife and I have been searching for something." Marcus and Denise exchanged a puzzled glance. "What kind of something?" Marcus asked. Whitmore folded his hands together. "There's a reason to believe in people again." The room grew quiet. Whitmore continued. "You see, I built my company from nothing. 50 years ago, I was just a young man with an idea and a borrowed $100. Over time, that company grew. Today, it employs thousands of people around the country." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Denise looked stunned, spoke calmly, without arrogance. "But as my company grew, I started noticing something disturbing. The world was changing. People were becoming colder, more selfish, more concerned with taking than giving." He paused for a moment. "My wife and I decided to test something." Marcus leaned forward. "Test what?" Whitmore smiled gently. "Human kindness." Denise's eyebrows lifted. "You mean?" "Yesterday was a test." Whitmore nodded. "We've spent months traveling to different neighborhoods, sitting quietly in public places, pretending to be lost, tired, or hungry, just waiting to see who might notice." Marcus swallowed. "Dan, did people help?" Whitmore sighed. Softly, "Very few." He looked down at Marcus again. "But yesterday, a boy with very little gave away the only food he had." Denise slowly turned to Marcus. "You gave them your lunch?" Marcus shrugged awkwardly. They looked hungry. Whitmore's voice grew softer. "Most people looked at us and walked away. Some even stared with suspicion." He paused. "You didn't?" Marcus looked down at his shoes. "It was just a sandwich." Whitmore leaned forward slightly. "No, Marcus, it was not just a sandwich." He gestured gently with his hand. "It was compassion. It was courage. And most importantly, it was dignity." Denise felt a lump form in her throat. Whitmore reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a small folder. "My wife and I started a foundation 10 years ago," he explained. "Its purpose is simple: to support young people who demonstrate extraordinary character." Marcus looked confused. "What does that mean?" Whitmore opened the folder and placed a document on the table. "It means that sometimes the world needs reminders that goodness still exists." Denise leaned forward to read the paper. Her eyes widened instantly. This can't be real," she whispered. Marcus looked between them. "What is it?" Whitmore smiled warmly. "It's a scholarship." Marcus blinked. "For me?" Whitmore nodded. "A full education fund. From middle school through college." Marcus's mouth slowly opened. Denise covered her lips with her hand. That's impossible," she said quietly. Whitmore shook his head. "No, Mrs. Hill, it's simply deserved." Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. "But I didn't do anything special." Whitmore chuckled softly. "That's exactly why you did." The assistant standing by the door placed another envelope on the table. Whitmore continued. "There's more." Denise looked nervous. "More." Whitmore nodded. "We also noticed something while researching Marcus." Denise stiffened slightly. "What do you mean researching?" Whitmore spoke reassuringly. "Only enough to understand the environment he's growing up in." He gestured toward the apartment. "We saw a hard-working mother raising a remarkable young man." Denise's eyes shimmered with emotion. Whitmore slid the second envelope toward her. This is for you." She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a check. Denise's hands started shaking. "Oh my God." "What is it, Mom?" She turned the check toward him. The number written across it was more money than Marcus had ever imagined. Whitmore spoke gently. "Consider it a housing grant from our foundation." Denise shook her head in disbelief. "You're saying we could move?" Whitmore nodded. "To a safer home? A better neighborhood? Somewhere Marcus has every opportunity he deserves." Denise felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I don't know what to say." Whitmore stood slowly. "Say that you'll continue raising him exactly the way you already are." Marcus looked at the old man carefully. "Why are you doing all this?" Whitmore paused for a moment before answering, "'Cause the world rewards power and money far too often." He looked directly into Marcus's eyes. "But it rarely rewards kindness." Marcus stood there silently. Whitmore gently placed a hand on his shoulder. He reminded me that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. He tapped Marcus lightly on the chest. "It's measured right here." Denise wiped her tears. "I promise you," she said softly, "Marcus will make the most of every opportunity." Whitmore smiled. "I already know he will." As the visitors prepared to leave, Marcus walked them to the door. The sleek black car still waited outside. Before stepping into it, Whitmore turned back to Marcus one last time. "You know something interesting?" he said. Marcus tilted his head. "What?" Whitmore smiled. "Is that sandwich you gave us yesterday?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah." Whitmore chuckled. "It may have been the most valuable meal I've ever received." Marcus grinned shyly, even though it was just peanut butter. Whitmore laughed warmly, especially because it was peanut butter. The car door closed, and the vehicle slowly drove away down the street. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching until it disappeared around the corner. When he walked back, inside the apartment, Denise pulled him into a tight hug. "You have no idea what you just did," she whispered. Marcus hugged her back. "I just shared my lunch." Denise shook her head gently. "No, baby." She looked at him with pride shining in her eyes. "You shared your heart." And sometimes, in a world that often forgets the value of compassion, a single act of kindness can travel farther than anyone ever imagines. Sometimes it crosses streets, sometimes it crosses cities, and sometimes it knocks on your door the very next morning.